there was like one thing they wanted to do is every frame should be perfect. That matter that they have, and it's not really because of security. Because of the security, you can put that on top of the Xorg server. It's really that hard to do if they really wanted to. But I think there wasn't any interest in the X11, so that's really the reason why, in my opinion.
What is your thought with everything? Every frame is perfect. Do you want to have some level of that with Phoenix? Like, where do you sort of stand with that?
Right. So I think from user's perspective, I think one reason.
Before we do that, just for anyone who's unaware, what is meant by every frame is perfect? We probably should explain that.
Right. So on Xorg server, you have had the issue where tearing that you have. Even though you maybe some solution to run a compositor, it doesn't always work. For example, if you have multiple monitors in some cases and things like that. And so they wanted to fix that in Wayland to have every frame should be perfect. And also it has lower compositor latency compared to X11, at least compared to the normal compositors. And so they wanted to fix that to make it sure that it always looks perfect. So if I go back to you asked if I want to do that in Phoenix, right? I think one of the reasons that people voluntarily changed to Wayland was because of tearing. That was one reason, and I want to at least display without any tearing by default. And actually, one thing in the Xorg server that they have done is to enable tearing by default. They did like 3 years ago, but they never pushed that to a release. So even though they fixed that long ago, no distro has that.
Right. Okay. Because I know there was like a setting you could change with Xorg that, at least on AMD and Intel GPUs, would disable the tearing. I don't know if it worked with NVIDIA. NVIDIA.
It does work with NVIDIA. You need to use NVIDIA settings for that.
Right. Okay.
Also one reason that I want to make Phoenix, and I wanted to move away from having that NVIDIA specific driver for that. So all of the improvements that I do will also be improvements on NVIDIA side. And also there are things like bugs in the NVIDIA X11 code because it's proprietary. You can't fix it. Like it's related to VSync, and to have every frame perfect, you can't really do that on NVIDIA X11 because of there are bugs in the code. So I know that MPV has had issues with that, so they disabled that code for NVIDIA. Anyway, so if I go back to Phoenix, I want to have no tearing by default, and I also want to do it better than what they have with even on Xorg with the tier 3 option.
What is wrong with the tier 3 option?
Well, if I, for example, try to use it with compositor, then it will be double compositing and things like that. That's one issue with it. But I also didn't want to in Phoenix. I won't force it to run. For example, if you try to run a full screen game, then it should be disabled. So that because if you have a full screen game, you don't need the compositor to do anything. You can just run. The game can instead itself decide if it wants VSync or not, and that will display it. Because the way compositors remove tearing on X11 is that they run the compositor is full screen window that fits all of monitors. And the reason it doesn't have tearing is because it runs in VSync. And so as long as you have a full screen window on X11, by full screen, I mean that it's full screen on all monitors. So if you have multiple monitors, that's really not really full screen mode. If you have one monitor, that is full screen mode. So in that case, you won't have any tearing if you enable vsync. So in that case, in Phoenix, I would just disable the compositor because the game itself will decide that if the user wants to not have vsync or not.
One of the things I actually, sorry, before we go to that, I guess we sort of diverged off the security stuff a bit ago, but I kind of want to jump back to that because I just remembered something. With the way you're thinking of handling the keyboard input, so you mentioned that applications won't need to like go and make any modifications for this. My understanding for how this would, if I understand the idea you're saying here, is basically you hook into the protocol that they would have already been using and then just add a prompt in between it, I guess.
Right, so actually let's go to how Xorg, because Xorg server has tried to fix this issue. They did it like 25 years ago.
Okay.
With Xays. And they did that. It was NSA that implemented that.
Oh, yes, I have been told about this. Okay. Okay, yes, go on. Sorry, I'll see if I can find it. Here we go.
Yeah, so they did that for use with C Linux, because with C Linux you have the you have this, every application has more permissions that you have on top of the usual Unix permissions. And with that, they have X11 specific permissions for every window. Like they have a nice GUI prompt that shows you can specify the permission for every window and things like that. But the issue with that is that if an application doesn't have access to something, then it just crashes the application, because with Xlib by default it crashes the application when it gets an error. So unless the application itself decides to disable that. So one thing I wanted to do, and also what Xlib is doing now with X namespace extension that they have, is to, instead of giving an error, you just show dummy data instead. So you have if you try to get access to the root window of the system and try to access keyboard, for example, it will instead get fake data. So it will seem like from its own perspective that it's reading input, but it's not really just have access to the real data. So when it tries to, so in Phoenix, if you the application will try to get global hotkeys, it will get that fake data, and then in the background it maybe show the prompt. Then when you accept that, then it will get directed to the real data.
Right. And this is the same thing you're thinking of doing with screen sharing as well, or screen recording.
Yeah, right.
Right, okay. So, to the application, it thinks it is seeing either the keyboard, it thinks it's seeing a window it's trying to capture, but it's not, it's something that sort of pretends to be that. It's not the actual thing until the user confirms they want to share it, and then the information is passed through.
Right. So by default, it will like in like keylogger, by default, instead of getting access to input when everything is focused, it will only get input when its own window is focused until it accepted that prompt. Then it gets access to everything.
One of the things you mentioned in the README for Phoenix is improvements for modern technology. And one of the things in here is proper support for multiple monitors. I think a lot of people don't realize how, I guess, in many ways, how much of a hack the implementation of multi-monitor support is, and how many problems that actually causes.
Yeah, so in the Xorg server, it has a frame buffer that expands all of the monitors, and it displays that it tries to display that at the same time. So it can cause some issues if you have multiple monitors with different refresh rate. But yeah, there are also some. It's also the main issue really with that is the way it handles compositors, because the compositor expands extends to all the monitors.
Mhm.
And when it has to sync, it has to choose to which monitor it should be synced to. So I believe by default, the way it works in AMD and NVIDIA is that it looks at the center of the window to see which monitor should be synced to. But actually in the X11 protocol, you can decide to which monitor a window should be synced to. Just that compositors don't use that.
Right.
So actually somebody could make an X11 compositor that works properly with multiple monitors, but nobody has really done that. So one thing I want to do is in Phoenix is to make that work automatically, even if you have a compositor that expands to all monitors.
So,
because I want existing compositor to work as well, just not the one that I will make.
The things like PyCom and anything else people might want to be using.
Yeah.
I guess you're not really, obviously trying to just get like basic applications started, but how would you even approach the problem of HDR? And I guess why, maybe this is a harder one to answer, why Xorg sort of never managed to do that?
Right, so there was a proposal by NVIDIA quite long ago to add support for HDR in X11, but it didn't really go any further from that. So you could really look at that and to see how this is done. But there's one issue in the X11 protocol is that in the core protocol, you could have support for HDR for 10-bit mode, but then the Windows won't have really alpha support, for example, and it will be limited to 10-bit support. So you can't have 12-bit or higher as well. So, and also that causes some issues. For example, if you try to run, you can run Xorg in 10-bit mode right now, but if you try to do that, some application won't display properly, for example, and also Steam, for example, it will just crash. So one thing I believe I will need to do is instead of making it like part of the core protocol, I will make it instead an extension that you have the application itself will have to use directly instead of automatically getting HDR. It will have to opt into that. So yeah, that will be the way to prevent it from applications to not behave as expected. And then on top of that, to make it work to make HDR work, it will be the same as in Wayland compositors basically, because that's the same.
But this is something that you're probably not gonna touch on for quite a while.
Yeah, right. And also, maybe there won't be any X11 application that uses this protocol that I'm doing. And to be honest, I don't really need to make a new protocol because X11 it has properties that you can set on Windows, and you can set any property on any window. So you can use that to, for example, set this HDR metadata. Then the compositor would read that. In this case, Phoenix would also read that. So I don't really need to make a new protocol extension for that in X11. But maybe there won't be any new application that would use that. But so one thing I want to do is support Wayland applications as well. So like even if you ran, even if you try to run a game and it uses the HDR protocol in Wayland, it should work in Phoenix as well. That's one thing I want to support. But yeah, HDR and all of that, that's something I will support much later.